Okay.
Lukey,
Oh,
you
David, Jubb, thank you so much for calling in today.
there? Yeah. It's a really good day. That's right. Yeah.
You know,
Um,
I've known you for a long time, but for people who don't, I would say that you're the Olympic champion of studying. I first met you in the realm of food, but you have so much knowledge on every topic that I've ever even considered, and I couldn't possibly do you justice with an introduction. I just would love to get your insight on anything that you have in store for us today, and I'm really proud to be able to connect the people who are watching my channel with you. I know that it's going to greatly benefit everybody who's watching, and thank you so much once again.
oh, yeah. That's so amazing because the Eclipse movement really stands for the rule of law and an alliance of law movement, which we've been talking about. And a long time ago, of course, everything was drawn up, and it was never drawn up that Congress wouldn't be the ones that would be coining currency. And little by little, but sure, special interest groups really have taken over the capstone, really, and we the people, have been put to the side to some degree where various things have gone on, like, for instance, private charitable contributions and things have all gone to WHO, and then regulatory boards that all of above that really is controlled by the same people who, run everything really. Because there's really only one currency as it sort of is at the moment, but where the controlledness is, you've got no sovereignty because people are not underneath any of those people. So, to stop monopolisation, because you've got special interest, and that's monopolisation in governance and in the judicial process and system, and the monopolisation of the media, which everybody could see clearly, and the logarithms at all that's been controlled foreignly, just to totally corrupt whatever process that does exist here. And so when you're talking about the rule of law, you're really talking about common law, which we could go into just a tiny bit here. But government is really only formed to protect your property, private property. So that's the reason for government is to protect your private property. Otherwise, all the social engineering and everything that's going on is just as absolutely evil as anything, really. But where special interest groups as private individuals can own a nation and can have far more wealth than many of the nations on the earth, for instance, and put those charitable contributions apparently toward interests, that special interests for themselves, but the informed consent and everything, which is the rule of law, of course, is really what common law is about. And we've got 5 countries in the world which are common law countries. They happen to be the countries at the moment that are sort of being targeted more by this black swan hoax, because there's no such thing. Nothing can be scientifically shown that anything is contagious like what that is. And if you, like I do, look at things forensically, you could predict the future, of course, that the plan is that the rule of law would be thrown out the window in the moment of, at the end of the year, that the election fraud has existed. And, and that's kind of what the plan has been, going along there. But then, the dangers, of course, is the collapse of the currency because you don't really have proper sovereignty. If there's no government per se, and the United Nations sort of exists because people elect to use that. And but we the people are not necessarily giving our informed consent at all. And the system's very corrupt. And you've got a lot of planned, instigated loss of industry and loss of substance from we the people, which that's not, government is not protecting private property rights when you look at things like this. So you've got a false accepted often solution, which is being put forward, and then you've got false opposition or controlled and monopolised and instigating all that you could see going on. And what would be the reason why anybody would want to have a psyops done on themselves? Like, and so these are things which really subterfuge and really planned more by one group relatively, but that it's a system that we have which we could assist to help to change. Otherwise, you've got the instigated sort of think poll, in like 1984, and you've got all the criminals really actedness that's of the real critical issues, why it would be that you would want to have the rule of law, which we could talk about just more so, but because what's lawful really is something, isn't it? It's under the laws of the United States of America. But what's legal could be within inside a corporation, but not lawful. Because common law really is check and balance on government, and only it is, in fact, that governance, like centralised in the way it's been, can have had some check and balance that Article 3, which is a constitutional court, Article 4 courts, which is above the executive branch because some challenges existed. But you and I, we have a system which would ordinarily be applied because you've got some claim, and everything that's just Article 1 or Article 2 is only really running along with presuppositions enormously and not having any fact. And corpus delicti being behind it. And so a nation is a fiction in relation to you, a living being. And what's a fiction can't be heard, but you, a living being, certainly can. And there's reached a point in the day where people could see that it's not logical to have something fictional above you who's living. So obviously, any governing body is really only sovereign as the people who are behind such. And yet you really don't look at, which we should, or because that's what the topic is that's redacted. And criminals always redact the topics which exposes the whole operation fully. And that's, you can look and see, but the topic that relates to having a world currency and looking at economic egalitarianism and reforming back to constitutional currency where it's positively inducted, not coming from debt, and getting rid of and resolving bankruptcy, and starting afresh from positive induction versus debt, which goes on, which money is created from a seeming positive induction, but given to everybody under negative inducted terms. And so the substance, by taking away all the gold, which happened in 1933 on the 5th of June, and all the substance was taken away so that you and I, we would not necessarily have our own currency to have common law courts. And so as a monopolisation, which is against logic, and part of the reason why the Constitution is written, to guarantee that no single person or entity could be foreign outside we the people, and that the rule of law institutes common law courts and Article 3 and Article 4 courts to verify fact. Otherwise, only Article 1 and Article 2 courts really stopped of false put presumption that you can show that not proper rules would necessarily be followed, that any informed consent exists. And to stop a fiction, because a nation is a fiction, isn't it? Where Sally isn't it, or Mary or John or Ralph or anyone. These are names of people who are real, versus Alphabet Soup Land, that's a fiction. So to be pretty incompetent for anybody to say that a fiction was hurt, that's ridiculous. And that would be then where someone is just fiction ruling over the living. And the black, white, frocked wig ones really have occupied the courthouse of we the people, which everybody could see that. And what would be the reason why you would have such foreign control over things that bridges between the departments in government, which you're not supposed to really have too much bridging over into these three areas, the judicial, legislative, and the executive branch of government. But to stop fiction ruling over the living and correct the path which protects the vision more of natural rights being upheld, that's what the heartfelt intent is, I'd say, everywhere for we the people. So no one should get mixed up by all the names that's used which relate to a fiction, because anything that's there, something that's an author, why not you and I or anyone have a very bright future? Because that's important, that ethic, which is room, and that word room is the most important word, really. And that's the most important room is really the room for improvement. And so for all people to hear what's said when somebody's saying, well, the rule of law, and common law really is this check and balance on government. And until such a time that this is what's instituted, so you've got more Supreme Court, where things are verified. You've got a low order of things that's lying through the censors and notoriously notarized, which are lesser forms of a fact. So a fact that's verified has someone behind that. And so you'd have to have somebody behind a claim, wouldn't you? Because it'd be an idea that someone had as a fiction, like the United Nations or the Economic World Forum or anyone, that's a fiction. And none of those things can have had any informed consent whatsoever. And isn't that the design of what communism really is? So most countries in the world really don't have common law. That's been not ever given, what it should be, but exists to some small degree in contracting. But you've got a balance of government, which if you look at nature, things such are decentralised. And if somebody's thinking about a future moment to be in an age of a quantum, then you're going to have to look into decentralised systems and things, because it's the only way that you can have quorum sensing in a system. So why would anybody logically not have a decentralised system and a ledger that we all own that's under a common trust, and that you and I, all of us own together the currency as it's created, from positive induction to be equivalent to an asset that it creates, that you end up with. And that can be done in a manner that is like water, which currency is supposed to be. Because your goods or anyone's goods should have free passage to travel, providing that no harm, injury, cost or damage is, because then we've got a claim. And so why not have a means to be resolved of things such, which we've always been given? But you could see that control with a big stick can not let knowledge to be as it should be, but the custom of we the people isn't something that you suddenly could just all of a sudden change. And because we value life, And because you're asking everyone right now to define their mission, and that the mission should be the support of life. Now, then you can hold anyone accountable to that, can't you? Because your ultimate purpose and vision is about life and natural rights being given to the living. And since 1666, which is a long time ago, it's not a good thing that everybody was left to be not in the Holy See, but just having to be bailed out and being in a debtor's situation because somebody other than you that that someone else is owning their corpse, apparently franchising that and things. So the rule of law is really where you're able to stop these criminals and things, which everybody should look into more and address currency issues. And you can see that a plan is to have fraud at the end of the year here coming up, and then the stalemate, and that being the plan. And then they're asking of foreign influence more to be engaged. That's a plan to be more, we as a people, stateless and ever more displaced. Because why would you want to wreck an economy just to win an election? I mean, these are things which is very, very ridiculous. So to institute positive inductive economic egalitarianism in the world is really what the Eclipse movement is about, and an alliance of law movement all over the earth, because you've got people in law enforcement, and you've got people in government, and you've got people in health, and you've got people in every field that would really be caring about strengthening the rule of law to bring substance back, because why would you want to go into a future moment without this being fixed? So we the people have a primary responsibility where we are to protect the infrastructure that does exist and bring about a better future, because everything that's handed to you could be considered to be an offer, and you could say yes, you could say, well, yes, with a condition, or you could say no, thanks. And the private and government is only formed to protect private property. So we, the people, really institute Article 3 courts and Article 4. If anybody looks to see the Army has to have done the best job, of course, wherever they are, as far as getting informed consent, and probably the Army manual for their attorneys outlines amongst the very better arguments and things that go toward having proper informed consent, because when you do, then you're not inviting all this sort of other stuff, because it's all done more with the Constitution. But otherwise, these are common customs that we have, and are written up upon common customs. And what would be a reason why we or anyone in a common law country or anywhere else would want something less for themselves? Because how would anyone want to trade with you if you're acting that way? You've to really be cared about your people, for sure, and others will then be seeing that you've got a sovereign currency behind you because you've got people behind the government. But the present grave danger exists to a setup, which is just a takeover of the Republic and all the common law countries that's going on. If you have a quick look on the map, you can see that. And so it's the lawful definition of we the people really is the entire aggregate of people as a collective group on the earth. So you've got we the people everywhere, haven't you? And that's not alphabet soup land. That doesn't describe we the people as a collective group with our custom. And so the custom that we have here is the same as we have anywhere else. Only, of course, it is where genocide has gone on, where if you look at all the genocide that has gone on, banking has been a major component of every single one of those. And where people haven't been the government is really without sovereign subjects. and to stop the sole source of credit for someone's trade name and having stolen that sort of thing is a liability of a fraud, of course, and all put to because of the tax evasion by all these quasi-seeming to be government, but actually agencies acting as private trading houses, which, again, you've got to bring in the rule of law, and then everything could be functional, and especially if you've got a verified vote because you've got a server, which we all own, which is what .arm is all about. And ARM being equivalent in a quantum world to an hour of time, which is based in galactic time versus the wobble of an atom, and currencies based in precious element, which is necessary, cesium to keep time, gallium to keep mass, and iridium to keep length. So those are the three variables that we have. And why not have a currency that's based in this new quantum, which is brand new idea, and everybody can get fueled up to be producing things which is brand new, a brand new technology that doesn't run off the A field, but runs off the B field, which always remains permanently on. And you've got quantum today of understanding even the particulate, the smallest pixelated dot in the vacuum, that's a liquid, as a steady state kickoff for, what has inverse gravity function like the beetle does in the bee. But if you've got to direct currency, then you're not going to have the things which is going on at the moment, like $9.5 billion annual was spent in basic education, and one country like France can have spent up to $19 billion on ice cream alone. And so you and I and everyone would, by our decentralised connection to each other through .arm, be able to have a proper governance. And I'd say that everybody's longing for what this is, and to not blame or look at people, because I think that that's not necessarily a good thing, because all you need to do is, the pen is mightier than the sword, and if you take away the S in front of that, you've got the word. The pen is mightier than the word. And that's what's needed, isn't it? So to not to be controlled and have a common law as our destiny certainly isn't the vision that anyone would have. That's a logical continuum, unless, of course, you've got common law. And the rule of law affirmatively limits the substance of official discretion, and laws need to be enacted straight away so that you or anyone can participate in protected disclosure and conduct, and not be retaliated against for having done that. And so to need to create a library more of interest that relates to property rights, and to have due diligence like we've been talking about, so that where the hypothecation of your or my labour and the people's labour doesn't have to reach through to another person's biological property, that's the kind of thing that's going on, which that's not really the rule of law. And to only be upheld to what it was that you upheld yourself isn't such a good idea either, is it? But with smart contract into a future moment, you could see many things as service done for us, which we own. And so that's the biggest movement on the earth, is this movement of the eclipse movement, which, if you look at nature, as we started to talk a bit about, and I don't want to belabour anyone, so I would wrap it up a little, but we've been talking about decentralised governance, which models what nature is. And so you can have quorum sensing occur within this, because you've got a verified fact, and a server like .arm is what we're talking about. And we all own the server, and so it could be touched and it leaves a fingerprint behind, and people can have their privacy, and everyone can be involved in making what needs to be to protect private property. But as a public ledger is as a common trust is, and such allows natural governance to be. But what would it be if a private company only it was, in fact, took the information, and might they have not the same? Well, they should. They should have the same connectedness to us as we the people. So government in the past always only has functioned from a centralised condition, which doesn't model anything in nature. You can understand perhaps how that came to be, perhaps. But a move into this new quantum age and leaving behind an age where all are given more a service isn't right. We should own, all of us, we the people, the service, and clear away the condition of being given some service provider. And to sustain peace, you could understand that you really do need positive economic inducted currency, and that because the fall short isn't ever there for what interest is where currency is created, only it is that it leads to things that such like war, which is unethical. So the rainbow prophecy is really what the original people talk about. And that's, about the rule of law or common law. There was 600 years of a federation that was very successful with 6 nations here, which hasn't been disbanded and still ongoing, just as the Republic is as well. So what laws were can have not been repealed. That was a law, that is a law. That's the truth. Truth yesterday is the truth tomorrow, and only yours or mine or somebody's perception could have been all over the place. But giving an inclusive, meaningful participation to everyone where they are is what everyone really cares about. And it's where things are being done to foment and less than cause people to be in their togetherness. But why not have a great, bright future? Look at, see who's behind what this idea is, have accountability, and go after an Equal Responsibilities Act. I mean, equal rights this, equal rights that. How about an Equal Responsibilities Act? Because that would bring about everything more. So you could equally enforce the independently and have procedural transparency in the process, where at this moment that doesn't exist because we've only got Article 1 and Article 2 where a captain is deciding the fate. And that's not a scientific process. That's the reason why in the 70s, by that time, the world has got rid of the death, putting people to death for crime. And they did that because you could see that the process was so full of variables that weren't accounted for, and that many people had been innocently had the capital punishment, and lots of errors were in many others, and so it was deemed to be, couldn't be ethical that you could do that because the burden of judgment couldn't be met. A burden of proof, burden of judgment couldn't really be met. So once and for all time, a renaissance can come to be. You and I, we all could live more in a golden age where we could put currency toward integrating back into nature, where a corporation hasn't got a soul and isn't going to be able to hear even a baby cry. Yeah?
Right.
Yeah, so there you go, sir. So anyway, I hope everybody's having a really good day as you get this. And personally, I think it's really a good thing that everyone could look into what the Eclipse movement is about, and then pass this on, because probably it might make more sense to you than many, many other things out there at this moment. Yeah. So anyway, love you, mate. Hope everybody's having a really great day, and we'll catch up to you.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Love you, mate.
Thanks again. You're the best.